this is Georgina Rose, and welcome back to the Darling YouTube channel. On this channel, we discuss everything on the fringes of magic, mysticism, esoterica, and religion. And in this video, this is part of my Next Level Magic series, which is a newer series on this channel where I give more advanced explanations of topics that I've already discussed and covered for people who are not beginners who want to take the next step in their journey. So before I get into the video, I do have a really special announcement. So I am hosting another trip with Trophy Trip. I currently have a trip running with them, but it's full. So I thought it'd be really good for people who still want to come on a trip to do a second trip. So we are going to India. I'm really excited. I just released the destination. On February 9th, the signups will be open. It will be for 7 days. There will be 8 to 24 people, and the whole time we will be with a local guide, and there will be an itinerary, which by the time this video out, the itinerary should be available on my Instagram if you want to read through it. And of course, when the trip launches, you'll be able to see it on the page. So definitely check that out. And if you're interested in meeting a community IRL and seeing some of the most amazing religious heritage sites in the world, definitely look into it. In the description box, I have an email link. And if you subscribe to the email link, you'll get sent the sign up right when it comes out. And the first 8 people to sign up will get a pretty big discount. So if you're interested in the trip, definitely get on the email list. All right, so without further ado, let's get into the actual video. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about Theurgy, and next level Theurgy. So I want to distinguish Theurgy and Ceremonial Magick because I did put that in the title. And that's because a lot of what is Theurgy now gets called Ceremonial Magick. And I think that came from the fact that modern esotericism really relies on what we would call the occult revival. So the occult revival is a period in esoteric history in the late Victorian and the early Edwardian period where there were all these occult orders sort of popping up all over Europe, and they were really innovating esoteric techniques. They really changed Hermeticism. They came up with the Hermetic Kabbalah. The Rider-Waite Tarot is from this. Philosophies like Thelema, Wicca, Golden Dawn Hermeticism, all these things came from this period of time. And in this period of time, a big emphasis was on ceremonial magic. This term was really heavily used. And ceremonial magic referred to what some other people call dramatic ritual, which is pretty much really elaborate ritual processions where you're doing invocations, evocations, and you use a lot of tools and materials. And from that point forward, most things that would be considered Theurgy fell under ceremonial magic, to the point where these terms are almost used interchangeably. So where is Theurgy from? So Theurgy is an ancient Hellenic term that means divine magic, magic of the gods. So in the ancient Hellenic world, they divided magic into 3 categories. Theurgy, magic of the gods, which most ceremonial magic and mysticism would fall into. So that would be anything where you're sort of connecting to the gods. Because if you are familiar with ceremonial magic, you'll know a lot of that is not results magic. A lot of it is just getting closer to divinity, purifying the soul, doing things like crossing the abyss, specific spiritual milestones, to transform you as a person, not just like get money, right? Like you're doing something more, you're doing something more significant. And Theurgy is all about that. It's about getting closer to the gods, and eventually in some Theurgic schools of thought, you can unify with the gods entirely, annihilating the self and becoming one with the Godhead, which is kind of the ultimate goal of a lot of, traditions as well. Theurgy, it is how you get the alchemical transmutation of the soul done. It's how you purify your heart, all these things. And then there's Goetia. Goetia is kind of like their term for like dark magic, scary magic. This would be things where you're like using demons, you're doing curses, all of that, right? And then the third category is Magia Naturalis, which is magic of the natural world, which refers to like planetary magic, plant magic, all of these things. So now that we've distinguished these things, we understand that Theurgy and ceremonial magic heavily overlap, especially in modern esotericism, but they are not the exact same. Things like mysticism also would be considered Theurgy. Let's get into how to do next level Theurgy. Something that has been lost in modern esotericism is the importance of purification. So before you begin any Theurgic process, you need to purify. This is incredibly important. And that is because throughout our lives, we accumulate miasma. Miasma is a Hellenic concept that kind of means like dirtiness, impurity. And this is accumulated through a bunch of different things. Whenever you use the bathroom, right, you pee, you excrete, you are accumulating miasma, right? When you go throughout your day, you accumulate miasma just by being around things, right? When you clean up your dirty floor, like that's miasma, right? But that is a sort of lesser miasma. And, when bad things happen in our lives, or we do something that's really viceful or wrong, we accumulate what I call greater miasma. And that is a whole different thing. So first, let's talk about how you get rid of lesser miasma. So before you approach the gods in a theurgic context, this is so important. You need to get rid of lesser miasma. The way that you can do this is by going to the sink and taking a cup and washing your hands while praying, right? Really simple. You can even just state an intention and then do this. And then after that, you go back to your ritual space and you say the Orphic hymns. The Orphic hymns are now used as invocations and prayers, but they are really a staple in Hellenic Theurgy. And so I really, really highly recommend using the Orphic hymns. So you'll clean off your hands, you'll cleanse yourself of your lesser miasma, then you'll go to your altar, you'll light some incense, some candles, and then you'll say an Orphic hymn, right? Now, sometimes we accumulate greater miasma, and greater miasma is a state of extreme ritual impurity. Often it is caused by kind of two things, going against the divine law of the gods or doing things that are viceful, which I think that phrasing like really throws people off because so many people think paganism is like a free pass to do whatever you want. Like, oh, well, I'm not Christian anymore, so, or I'm not Muslim anymore, so like none of the rules matter. And of course, as pagans, we have different rules. We are not under the same moral framework, but we do have morals. The entire term virtue comes from Plato and Platonism, who is very much a pagan, no matter how much Christian academics try to revisionist that. You know, you gotta understand that there is virtue and these things are good. And when we do virtue in beauty, we are of the gods because the gods are the fullness and completion of beauty and virtue. So viceful things that can get us in trouble are, you know, things like murder. Like, this is probably, like, if you read through texts about miasma, this is, like, the most cited problem that causes greater miasma is, like, if you're a soldier, right? In ancient Rome, like, when soldiers went to war, they had to come back and go through a specific ritual process before they could go to regular temples again. But obviously, it's not just murder, right? Whenever you do a really big moral transgression against divine law, this is really what comes up. Or if you handle, like, a dead relative, like, if you know, have a relative around you die and you have to, like, you know, take part in that or have an open casket funeral, like you will have accumulated greater miasma. And so it can be caused by these two things, like really impure things as well as doing things that are really wrong and against what the gods want us to do, right? Both of those things put you in greater miasma. And this is not a state you're going to be in regular, but when you are in it, what you need to do is a few things. And this is the procedure that I really recommend. So I think it's really important to call out to the epithet of Zeus Catharsis. So in ancient Rome, whenever you were in a state of greater miasma, you basically had to get right with the gods. And who rules over law and justice? That would be Zeus. So you have to go to Zeus. Zeus Catharsis is the specific epithet that I recommend because to get out of miasma, you need to do a thing called catharsis, or our modern word catharsis, right? You need to rip that off of your body, detach it from you, and then be purified again. So you need that catharsis, very literally. So Zeus Catharsis is the perfect epithet to call upon. If you say that regularly, you should be good. And as well, once you have made catharsis, you have gotten right with the gods, you have, you know, gone and made amends, right? You made amends to the gods, you got right with divine law, you've remembered divine law, and you sort of sought out to be virtuous going forward. You are going to need to do solar veneration. I really recommend this specific ritual called the Stele of the Aeon. It invokes Helios. It's very similar to, like, you know, a lot of theurgic rituals. You can find it on the internet, like it's available. But that one's really good. It's pretty simple. It involves, you know, calling out to a god, invoking a god, and then using the barbarous names. Barbarous names is something that comes up again and again and again in Theurgy, and in Ceremonial Magick. Which are basically these like names like Eo, wow, 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 Barrio. That's a really horrible covering of them, but they're basically like words that are not really any language, and you vibrate them, which where you go like that, kind of like what you stereotypically think people do when they meditate. Like you do that of these names, and obviously there's no correct way to pronounce them, so you don't need to lose sleep over it, but there are ways to do it more wrong than others. So it uses that, and since it is so solar, like it does purify you. As well, you could use this specific ritual called the Headless ritual. This is from the Greek Magical Papyri. Greek Magical Papyri is really full of a lot of Theurgy. Now, there is a lot of stuff in the Greek Magical Papyri that I would say is not Theurgy. Like, there's a lot of, like, love spells all over it, and that's pretty irrelevant to Theurgic work. Like, I don't really think that's what you should be looking at, but some of the other stuff is really good. And the Headless ritual, it's used in a number of ways. It actually was transformed into the Bornless ritual by Crowley, which is a pretty good adaptation, and then later into Liber Samach, and I cannot stand Liber Samach. I think it's a horribly structured ritual. I hate that one. But the Headless ritual, it was originally used as an exorcism. And so when you're in greater miasma, you basically need to like exorcise yourself. Exorcism is a pre-Christian concept. And you don't just always have to exorcise yourself of, you know, demons. Like sometimes it is just miasma attached to you that you do need to exorcise yourself of. So learning these rituals, looking at these rituals can be really, really helpful. So if you want to get serious with Theurgy, you want to take Theurgy to the next level, you're really going to need to get in contact with and achieve knowledge and conversation with a guiding spirit. Now, there's a few options for this. In Ceremonial Magick, modern Ceremonial Magick, the one that everyone is going to bring up is the Holy Guardian Angel, which I have discussed a few times in videos. And that's a great option. If you're into modern Western Ceremonial Magick, you should go this route. But I want you to know, like, the Melon is not the only way to do it. Everyone will immediately bring up the Melon ritual. That's not the only way to go. You can say the Bornless ritual every single day, and you can also even use the Headless ritual, which I mentioned earlier. It is an exorcism, but there are sections of the Headless ritual where there's a statement of intent. And sometimes you will see it written without a statement of intent, and it'll just like say stuff. But look at different translations, and sometimes you'll see that there are certain parts of it that are changed. That part you can change it to asking for your Holy Guardian Angel to come to you and help you. And you would do that every single day. Now, if you're doing that as your method, you do need to be in a state of ritual purity regularly. You need to be living piously, and you need to level up aestheticism in your life, not aesthetics like the opposite of hedonism, that one. You need that in your life. And as Theurgist, like a conversation that needs to be had is piety. Piety is something people are a little scared of in the modern age because it's kind of antithetical to modern lifestyle. But a little bit of piety, even if you're not like a monk or like leaving society or that level of piety, right, is still something we should strive for. We can all be a little more pious. Everyone has behaviors or tendencies or vices that they can get rid of, right? And it's a continual process. As we get closer to the gods, these things get easier. There's a Sufi idea that I really think does align with Theurgy. It's not explicitly a Theurgic idea, though I would kind of say it is, called the Purification of the Heart. And there's this really good book called The Purification of the Heart. I really recommend it. It actually really influenced me in a lot of ways, where it talks about how as you get closer to, they obviously use the term a lot, but the Godhead, right? Your heart gets purified, and our hearts are sort of ridden with diseases from the world around us, which really, I think, just reminds me of miasma. It's very similar to miasma in certain ways. And as you pray, as you get close, as you do mysticism, you sort of get closer and closer, and that purifies your heart, right? And so piety gets easier the more connected to the gods you are. The more you're praying, the more you're doing rituals, like, it actually is easier, and your life does get materially better the more time you spend with the gods. Because honestly, like vice, like, people are like, oh, those just aren't things I can't do. But honestly, the truth is, vices hurt you in the material world. It's not just like karma or a spiritual punishment. Like, these things are damaging. And I had a guy on my podcast, and he said this so beautifully. Sins, vice, whatever you want to call it. The problem with it is that it makes you put the material over the spiritual, right? You're putting the material world over the gods. And that's why it messes you up. It's not just like arbitrary things people say you shouldn't do. Like, they're there for a reason. Virtue is there for a reason. I really suggest all pagans read Plato. And you know, a lot of people read Plato and they're like, oh, this is like political, philosophical writing. But it's not. It's got a deep esoteric layer to it, because in the ancient world, like, these things were less detached than they are now. In the modern world, we compartmentalize everything, right? Like, politics, philosophy, religion, spirituality, even religion and spirituality are separated. Like, it's wild, and they're not historically. And so reading Plato can really give you a good sense of virtue and what a Theurgist should seek out to do. So, a crux practice of Theurgy is invocation, calling spirits into you. So this is also a core idea in Ceremonial Magick, and really every tradition. I don't know a practice that doesn't involve invocation that's like a esoteric practice, but it's so important when you're doing Theurgy. Theurgy doesn't use as many tools as Ceremonial Magick, but there are some that are used. That would be incense, candles, and ritual attire. When you're doing Theurgy, it is important to dress for the gods, and dress in a way that is appropriate to the ritual you are doing, right? If you're doing Purification, you should wear white, even maybe a white scarf on your head, right? Now, if you're invoking Helios, maybe you should wear gold or something that imitates. There's a really good idea, and this is a Ceremonial Magick idea that I think really translates into Theurgy so well. And it's the idea that you should dress like the god you are assuming. Because when you invoke, right, you call the god into you and they enter your body, right? Kind of like a mild form of possession. And then you assume the godhead, right? And what that means, it sounds kind of edgy, and It's not, right? It's you become one with that God, and that God kind of becomes one with you. Like, you merge in this ritual for that temporary point of time. And so dressing how that God would dress can really help you assume the Godhead. As well, another thing that is used heavily in Theurgy is the use of idols. Specifically, one that I really like is Baitels. That's a Near Eastern term. Obviously, Beit-El, like, Bait is the term for like the object itself, and then El is God, because El was a Canaanite ancient Near Eastern god. And a Beitel is essentially like a stone that represents that god. When you have the stone, you can connect to the god, and it really helps you get there. Shiva lingams, I think, are very similar to this. Like, I think there's a real parallel there. And just statues of the gods themselves, idols. The word idol is such a dirty word nowadays because it's been so demonized. But honestly, the Abrahamic religions use other things similarly to how we use idols. Idols are not bad. This is like a big propaganda you have to unlearn. Idols are not bad. Praying with objects to help you get in there, and images of the god are not bad. Now, the next thing you might want is a set of prayer beads. You can make them yourselves. You can buy them, however you want to do it. Making it yourself can make it a little more special. But something like that, just to count what you're doing, because some theurgic practices do use things like mantras. Like, you can take the epithet of a god's name, I said Zeus Catharsis earlier, and essentially chant that, and that get you into a theurgic mindset and help you do mysticism. Now, the next part of Theurgy that you see a little less in ceremonial magic, but is still something that will come up, is ritual astasis, which is basically where you call a god to you and you enter like a divine madness, a beautiful divine madness, not one of schizophrenia or mental illness, but one of real connection, where you're kind of intoxicated by the gods themselves. And there are specific practices that can really help you get there. I think incorporating movement into your Theurgy is really a good one to get you to that space, because I find when I move, it's a little easier to become an ecstatic ritualist. A lot of my rituals, I'm not someone who likes to move. I kind of like to stay still and invoke and really enter in with the gods and that kind of quiet mysticism, but the louder mysticism of movement can do so much. The ancient priestesses in Mesopotamia and Samaria and the Near East would heavily incorporate dance into their practice. In fact, it's theorized that maybe practices like belly dancing might have originated as ritualistic dancing. And so that is a big thing, moving in a circle. And this was brought back a little bit by Wicca and the occult revival with the circle dance, where like you'll say the name of the god and you'll kind of dance in a circle. Things like this are a theurgic practice that can really get you into divine astasis. And divine astasis is a mental state that's so hard to describe, but it's a really transformative one, and one that really does like impact you in a very, very strong way. So that's a part of Theurgy that you can absolutely look for and incorporate, and you can be creative with it. There's, you know what I mean? Theurgy, there's a lot of ways to do it, because fundamentally Theurgy is just divine magic. It's magic of the gods. So things like this can be incorporated. You can try a lot of different things, and your Theurgy does not need to look ceremonial. It can be simple, it can be complex. It's just a whole discipline, an entire type of magic. Just as natural magic can look radically different, Theurgy can look radically different depending on what you are actually doing. Now, the last thing about Theurgy that I must discuss is the goal of Theurgy. And the reason why I've brought up the constant ceremonial magic parallels is because this is also the goal of ceremonial magic in most traditions. And that is Theosis, unification with the gods. Now, I must define the difference between Apotheosis and Theosis, and why they're really not that different. So Apotheosis is to become a god, become a, god alive or whatever, right? That's just, I become God. I do ritual and I become God. Now, Theosis is annihilation, right? So basically what your goal is to go so high, go so far up the tree of life, go so far up the pillars that there is nothing that distinguishes you from the gods. You have become with the gods, you have merged into them, and you've annihilated yourself. Now, in the grand scheme of things, these sound really different, but in practice, they're kind of not that different. They're kind of the same. I think Theosis is a better way to think about it, because I think the whole Apotheosis thing can become very egocentric and materialist and throw you into vice and things that are counterproductive to mystic development. But fundamentally, these are similar things. Our aim is to become one with the gods, to be all of the gods, because we are divine. We have a divine spark in us, right? Emanationism is true. We are an emanation down from higher things. And so the point of this is to become one with the gods. And that is why we seek the gods, because the gods can purify us, they can heal us, and they can do this great work with our souls, with our hearts, with our lives. That is worth pursuing. And that is why we do these things. And when you are doing Theurgy, you must remember this. My goal is to see the beauty of the gods, to honor and bask and enjoy the beauty of the gods and then try to strive to be that, because beauty is an ultimate good as the gods are an ultimate good. And that is why we seek these things out. That is why we go down the path of Theurgy, and that is why we do these things. And I think the biggest problem that modern esoteric paths have, and this has been a critique of mine since I was really new, is they don't explain the why. And Theurgy gives you a clear why. Why are we doing this? And that matters, because otherwise we'd be directionless and lost, and that is a path that nobody wants to go down. So that's all I have to say about advanced Theurgy and how to, do more Theurgy. I guess advanced is a little, maybe this is more intermediate. I would say this video is probably a little more intermediate, but you need to talk about the intermediate before the advanced. So I'm going to talk about Theurgic techniques in a video soon. Please like, comment, subscribe, and ring the bell. You can find me everywhere online, and this video series and this whole channel is supported by Patreon. So if you join Patreon, you get to meet with me once a month. It's really cool. I do like a mentoring session. You can also get all of these videos early and a ritual guide that I write every month. This is the most popular thing to sign up for, where it has like 4 or 5 rituals every month that you can just follow along with very detailed instructions. So whether you're a beginner or more advanced, you can take wisdom from it. All right, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Please like, comment, subscribe. And if you're subscribed for 93 days, you will meet your Holy Guardian Angel, and you'll never need to learn Theurgy at all. All right, bye.